Are we recording? Yes, you are now.
Okay. Hello, welcome to the April 2nd Joint Facilities Advisory Commission meeting. We are holding a hybrid public meeting which enables remote electronic participation as legally authorized by the Code of Virginia for JFAC's electronic meeting policy. We do have JFAC members participating virtually and some here in person. At this time, I'd like to orient everyone to our hybrid environment and cover a few specifics on how tonight's meeting will be run. Members of the public may attend the meeting here in person or electronically by using the Microsoft Teams link provided on the JFAC website. Additionally, there is a dial-in phone option for those who wish to use it. For commissioners who are joining virtually, please keep your camera on for the duration of the meeting. Otherwise, you will be marked absent and unable to participate. Keep phones and devices muted until you are called upon. Please raise the virtual hand in Teams if you wish to be recognized. For our virtual attendees using Microsoft Teams, please turn off your video feed. The Microsoft Teams meeting chat should only be used for participants who need technical assistance or for members of the public to request to speak during the public comment period. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public comment period. Additionally, notes for our members of the public would like to provide feedback. We will hold public comment periods at the beginning and end of the meeting. Those requesting to speak may do so during only one comment period and will be allotted up to 3 minutes to speak on tonight's agenda items. When virtual attendees are called upon to speak, you must unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that is located on your meeting command bar. The moderator does not have the ability to unmute you. You will be muted when your time has concluded. Lastly, this is a public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to Freedom of Information Act. So thank you. Thank you to our county staff and our APS staff that are hosting us this evening. We are a little low on numbers this evening.
Yeah, if I could just put in, because we don't have quorum in person, the virtual members won't be able to participate. Okay. So they don't need to have their cameras on.
I thought this was a hybrid meeting, which that rule doesn't apply to hybrids.
It does. That's just virtual meetings. For hybrid meetings, you have to have quorum in person. So,
okay. So we need 2 more to show up in person for Claire and Andy to participate. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. But they're welcome, they will get to see the protest.
Yeah.
And if you guys, Claire and Andy, if you have comments, if you are unable to participate, if you have comments or questions from the meeting, please email them to me and I'll see if I can get them to the proper channels. Okay, so welcome. Do we want to have the staff? Can we have our staff members introduce ourselves? Because we have some new faces and some guest presenters. So you want to start, Kathy?
So welcome. This is your Facilities and Operations. I'm Kathy Lynn, Director of Facilities and Operations. Our department assumed the planning responsibilities this school year as it was reorganized from under the Chief of Staff to Facilities and Operations.
So the planning department consists of me, Michael DePaula, principal planner.
Wait, Ed?
And Helen Hartman, which is our data architect, and she's not here. Out of the office, as well as Kathy Lynn. But that's not our only hat that we wear. Wear many more. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to our last APS, who is our liaison to the JFAC.
I'm the liaison. I'm Jeff Chambers. I'm Director of Design and Construction. Liaison to JFAC.
And then our other county folks.
Sure. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Hardy with CPHD, a research team here with.
Hi, I'm Nicole Boland. I'm on the research team with Elizabeth.
And do you want me to just? Emily Garrett, Associate Planner and Comprehensive Planning, formerly on this team, so looking forward to the update.
I'm Stacy Snyder. I'm chair of JFAC for another couple of months.
I'm April Everett. I member recently joined.
Kurt Schuler, also a recently joined member.
Okay, well, that was our welcome, our introductions. I find that these demographic updates and the student enrollment projections, getting them at the same time, is a really valuable collaboration of information and data. I think it's really important for our boards to understand this information and for our, in concert with one another. I mean, I think both of the work that you do is really valuable, and together, I think it just paints a broader picture. And every year, it's one of my favorite meetings. So I'm looking forward to getting it. I guess the next thing would be to call for public comment. Is anyone online or do you know public comment? Okay. And since we do not have a physical forum yet, we're going to put off the approval of meeting minutes. And I guess we will just go ahead and start with the presentations.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, thanks for having us here again tonight. I think this is the third or fourth year. You guys are our #1 customers for committee, so we appreciate you. Tonight we are, if I can get this to work. Okay, tonight we're going to start off with reviewing the current population estimates like we have done in past years. We're also going to look at the components of change, and then also talk about our latest forecast round 10.1. So we're going to start off with our population estimates. So here are estimates going back to 2012. The 2020 census bar is the one in yellow or gold here. So in 2020, we reached 238,000. And after that, because of the pandemic, we saw a slight decline in the population. But we estimate that we have surpassed that now, and we're at 243,760 people. Now I'm going to look at population change in the last several years. And this data here is from the US Census Bureau's population estimates program. So every year they put out these numbers, with the latest being 2023 is the latest that we have the data broken down by age. And we're starting to see, some trends, evolve from this data. The first thing is like the number of those under 5 years has declined. While we see those in the older cohorts, especially those over 70 plus have increased. Those age 25 to 29 is still a really strong age group for the county. But we see, and we'll show you in the next slides, that this age group doesn't really stay in the county. Just another way to look at it, sometimes it's easier to not have all those lines. So this breaks it into 10-year increments going back from 2020 to 2023. And you can see that we do have age groups where we have seen declines. Those 0 to 9, as we've seen the second largest decline. Also, those 30 to 39, that has declined for the county. And then slightly 40 to 49 and 60 to 69. We have had some increases over the past 3 or 4 years. Those 10 to 19, 50 to 59, and then 70 plus, really some increase in those groups. So again, these are the biggest age groups that have seen changes. And I think when you're looking at that 0 to 9, I think in the past, we've seen like some connections with those 30 to 39. You know, those are probably the folks starting to have kids and move out the county. This is a lot of colors here. So again, it was 5-year increments, but we took it a little back farther, back to 2013. So we're looking at data from 10 years. And this looks at it from 0 to 4, you know, going all the way up to 85 plus. Something that we noticed is a big, see if I can see, does that work? Yes, okay, good. So those 25 to 29, you can see there's a big drop there, but we're, holding steady the level. I think in the past we have talked about how this was after the recession. Arlington, we had a lot of jobs here. This is a place where people move to and they stay here, especially for that young age group. And as that age group, which was the millennials, there was just so many of them, and that's why we had that big spike around the 2010s. Look at a different way, again, the 10-year breakdown. So we can see the 0 to 9, it peaked and now it's going down. 10 to 19, I think that is that peak of that school age population moving through the grades. The 20 to 29, like we said, it was high, a lot lower, it's lower now, and then it's 30 to 39, slightly lower as well. But the older age groups, they keep getting larger in the county. This is just another way to look at it, the percent distribution. So it's very much like the slide before, it just gives you normalize it by population. Something else that I always find really interesting is the age sex pyramid. So if you have a growing population, you're going to look like a pyramid, right? There's not going to be any fluctuation, just look like a triangle. So we do have that in 2013. It looks like we actually have two triangles. One here, one larger, and then one at the bottom. But as we go along in time, we see that our triangles, our points are getting a little more narrower, right? And also the younger population, it really looks like a cylinder. And we're getting more and more looking like what the US population pyramid looks like. It doesn't have that peak like we have because we have a lot of opportunities for those 25 to 29, but the US is more of a cylinder. And then just another way to look at how we can see how it's changing over time. I can see it's just morphed into that cylinder. I don't know what else to call it.
Christmas, like a Christmas tree.
Yeah, right, it does, yeah. So then, the things that make our population change are the components of change. So we have natural increase with our births and deaths. Then we have migration. So people moving in and out of the county. I wanted to start with migration this time. So this goes back to 2011. It looks at how migration has changed for the county. So the darker blue is domestic migration. So meaning that people moving from around the US. The lighter blue is international migration, meaning people coming to Arlington from outside of the US. And you can see, again, post-recession, 2011, 12, 13, we had a lot of positive migration, both domestic and international. We still have, positive international migration, but what's happening is as the rest of the country gets better and they have jobs and other opportunities and housing is cheaper in those areas, people move out of this area. So that's where we get a lot of domestic migration moving out. And you'll see back, since 2014, or actually a little bit in 2013 as well, we've had a loss in domestic migration, especially after the pandemic, 21, 22. The pink line here is the net migration. So a lot of like after the pandemic, it's negative. But what's a nice change is in 2024, we've actually had positive net migration. And while we've still had strong international migration and coming in, we've had a loss in the negative domestic migration. So less people are moving to other places in the US. So it gave us a little bit more of a bump in our population. So if we look at just domestic migration, we can see that there's the younger population, meaning those 20 to 34, are definitely more mobile, even 39. But as people age, they become less mobile. There's less moving to and from Arlington. Again, these are our strong movers, are those 20 to 29. I wanted to point you all to a recent report that came out from the Northern Virginia Regional Commission, using IRS data to look at migration patterns that have shaped our area since the pandemic. If you want to download this report, you can get it at novaregion.org. And two main patterns have been found. And it's really that larger households, higher incomes, older individuals don't move as much. They stay here, stay in the same county, actually. Compared to smaller households with lower and middle income that are younger adults, and those are the ones that are moving. We also looked at this data for Arlington. So keep in mind, this is 2021, 2022. It's right, in the pandemic and a little bit after the high time. So that's where we had that massive out migration. So these trends show that we had more outflow than inflow, but just keep that in mind when we're talking about this data. So for Arlington, individuals moving to Arlington are mostly coming from other states. So if we look at the way this is broken down, it's total migration at the top one. So we have inflow of 22,707 and outflow of 27,000. And it's broken down by domestic, so US migration. And at the bottom here is the foreign migration. This top area are our metro areas. So we wanted to see how are people moving either to and from Arlington, going to other places in Northern Virginia or in the metro area compared to the rest of the state and other states as well. And what we found was 52% of people coming to Arlington are coming from outside the metro area. Or they're coming from Maryland. See, those together make up a really big, strong portion of it. Individuals moving out of Arlington are more likely to stay in Virginia or the region. So we look at people moving out, 52% stay in the Washington, D.C. area, and 6% go to other localities in Virginia. So that's 58% total. We also found that individuals moving, so the IRS provides adjusted gross income per return. Way to think about that is it's median household income. It's not a perfect science for the calculation for this, but that's just the way to think about it. And a lot of demographers will use that interchangeably. But if you think about household income and people coming to Arlington, the average is 101,000 versus those leaving is 133, was 134,000. So yes, they're coming from other places in the US or, foreign. And this income is calculated using some of that income that they made in other locations, which is probably lower than what it was here. But people are coming here at lower incomes. They're getting higher, they're getting experience, growing in their job and career, growing in their households, and they're moving out. Show you that they're at a higher income without flow. Let's see, and what I said from these points is those that move. So this one is interesting because if you look at people moving out of Arlington, going to Northern Virginia, which is this one here, they're making 135,000 versus those that are moving out of Northern Virginia but staying in Virginia, they're making 120,000. So for me, looking at that, it's housing is really important where these people are going because they're moving outside of this area. Probably, telework had a big role in this as well. And then looking at individuals per return, that's individuals per tax return. This can be thought of average household size, even though these low, I just want to give a caveat that these numbers are a lot lower than average household size because you can have multiple returns per household. So just looking at this here, it shows that the households coming in to Arlington is lower than the households that are moving out. So you might have a single person coming into Arlington, and a family baby. And what I thought was interesting here was that the highest ones were the folks that are staying in Northern Virginia. Well, it's that one at 1.5. And the people who are moving outside of Northern Virginia, but still staying in Virginia, 1.49. But they remember those are the ones that had the lower income spot. So that's definitely showing us that those are larger households moving farther out. Okay, we can see this in the household type as we have changed throughout the year. This is American Community Survey data, the latest from 2023. So this looks at non-family and family households. Non-family means non-related individuals living together. And that's the dark blue. And I think as we talked about last time when we were here, after the pandemic, we actually saw a decline in the number of family households. We've seen it's increased a little bit since 2020. Now we're back up, we're over 50,000. And still we're growing. We've grown in those non-family households, it was 59,000 of the 60, now we're at close to 64,000. The outcome of this is that our average household size continues to decline. The most recent ACS numbers show 2.03 persons per household. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about births and deaths. So these are the births to Arlington residents from 1995 to 2023. As you can see, 2023 is the lowest number on the chart. I didn't bother going back further than I don't even know if that data is available online, but we could look. But really, when you think about our population in 1995, I don't know what it was, probably 180 something. And what it is now, you think of the birth rate, it had to be a lot higher back then to get 2,600 births with that smaller population. So 2006 was previously the lowest at 2,561. And our highest was in, I think it's 2016. And since then, the fertility rate has really been declining for not only the county, but for the whole country, and pretty much I think the whole world is in that category now. And this looks at the change in the birth rate since 2007. So if we look at how it's changed, actually since 2006, the change over time. So we were, had positive number of births, more than what we experienced in 2006-07 period. But again, since 2017, we just have had a decline in the number of births. In terms of death, this goes back to 2016. I think we've always been hovering around that 800, 900 mark. Pandemic, saw an increase in the number of deaths. And then I think we'll pretty much be hovering around that 900 to 1,000 range, just because our population is aging. And you tend to see more deaths when your population ages. Okay, now with that, I'm going to hand it over to Nicole, and she's going to cover the forecast.
Yeah, we're gonna switch gears a little bit for a minute here. So I'm gonna talk about the most recent forecast round that we did, 10.1, that was finalized this past summer. There. So this talks a little bit about the county and how we participate in the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments forecasting program. So this 30-year forecast is the basis for a lot of functional plans in the areas of transportation, water resources, air quality, housing, land use, and energy. And regionally, when you look at this from a regional perspective, the forecast is used in travel demand models, which determines how population investments will affect mobility in the region. The forecast was last done in 2022. So we, like I said, just finished this one summer of 2024. The variables that are used in the forecast include, we look at housing units, households, population and employment, and those give us our forecast numbers. And this is also included, I don't know if I say this later, but is also included in our profile. So there's more information in our profile document as well. So here, the previous round of the forecast was 2022. And during this current update, we analyzed land use and development changes over the past 2 years, which included by-right projects. And we also included the most recent adopted plans and policies in the county, and also the county board approval of 17 different projects. We updated the office vacancy rates and the office and residential absorption rates. This also includes a new planning corridor in the county, the Langston Boulevard area, which following plan adoption in 2020. And here I'm going to take a little bit of time to dive into the our methods for the forecast and how we develop it. We began by using various data sources and information that's available to us through our county resources. So this includes our development tracking database, which I maintain. I do a lot of work on our master housing unit database. Again, the adopted plans and policies, GIS, permitting data, staff expertise. We work a lot with our county planning staff, them, in addition to CoStar and the U.S. Census Bureau. The areas forecasted for future growth only include sites that have been approved by the county board through the site plan special exception process or the form-based code approvals, or designated areas that are designated for higher density development in accordance with the adopted sector plans or small area plans. And I just want to note for you guys that this forecast round includes approvals through July 1st, 2024. So any plans or policies or projects that were approved in the third or fourth quarter aren't in this round. Nobody knows. So this to get a little more specific with our method in terms of the population, we use our master housing unit database, which is a GIS layer that has all of Arlington's housing units in it. We start there, so that creates our base, and we build up from there. So then we apply these factors to get our estimated change in the housing supply. So let me see if I can slow this. So we take the housing units and we apply the factor of the housing occupancy rate. And then that gives us our number of households. Then we take those households and apply the average household size, and that gives us our population county. And then in terms of employment for the forecast, our methods for this are based on statistics recorded in our database for completed projects for office, retail, other space in the county, and hotel rooms. And then we also use CoStar office vacancy rates for the submarket and non-submarket areas and normalize those to the 10-year averages by 2050. The jobs for office, retail, the other space, and industrial are estimated by using square feet per employee. And then we estimate the number of self-employed jobs by applying a factor to the forecast household population, and then we distribute that throughout the county and the residential areas. And then here, so for forecast timing, so when we're looking at all the different sites and projects for the forecast and developing the timing for when those projects will be completed, we get this information. We're informed by staff experts of, have insight into how project status of different projects in the county, property ownership patterns, development activity in the area, and different plan assumptions by the plans that have been adopted in the county. And then we estimate or further calibrate the forecast by using historic countywide submarket residential and office absorption rates. So now we've talked about that. Ooh. There's again. Oh, there it is. Oh, where's our girl? So here I'm gonna go through the results of our forecasts on a few different slides, and then we'll talk about a couple key takeaways. So here, this is showing, as you can see, the blue line is round 10.1, the one we just finished. The pink line is round 10.0. So this is showing that the change in the number of units between 2020 and 2050 is 45,900 units that will be added to the county. And that's a 38.6% increase by 2050. And then this is, our households here, we're forecasting a 41.4% increase in the number of households by 2050, which is, so when you're comparing that to the last round of the forecast, that's about 1,800 more than were forecasted in 10. And then for our results for the population here, this is showing that we're adding almost 70,000 people by 2050, which is a 29.3% increase. And our last one is our employment, which these numbers are lower than forecasted in the previous round, 10.0. We're still showing a 20.1% increase in jobs between 2020 and 2050. In the previous round, it was a 28% increase. So it's dropped down, and I'll further explain that here on the next slide and our key takeaways for the forecast for this round. Again, on average, about 1,500 net housing units between 2020 and 2050 are anticipated to be delivered. Our housing vacancy remains low, which is resulting in the slightly higher number of estimated households. And the decline in the average household size is showing us a slightly lower population compared to round 10. And as I was just talking about with the employment, that's really a result of the historically higher office vacancy rates that we've been seeing and the reduced demand for office construction. So that's how we're seeing that difference in the percentage of jobs that will be anticipated between in the next 30 years.
And all of this is just until July 1st, 2024.
Yeah.
So doesn't take anything into account that's happened since then.
Well, it does.
It does.
in a
Yeah.
way. So we have to have we have to have a cutoff date for approvals, because
Right.
as we're going, this process takes months to do this forecast. So we were 3-4 months in, and things are being approved by the board as we're going along. So we know things that are coming up for approval, so we'll put that into the forecast, but without the bonus density.
Yeah.
Because that bonus density, sorry.
Yeah. No,
That
that's
bonus
good.
density is, we need the board's approval. So it is. And when we know of other plans that are working through the process, and they're working through the site plan process, and when they're gonna be going to the board. So we'll include those as well, just probably a little reduced density because of the bonus density. We need the board, really come from the board for that. That's all I have. And we put questions here, but I don't know if we want to hold them until after APS does their part, or
Yeah, is that what you guys?
either way is fine.
Does anybody have any questions on this? I had one kind of clarifying question, and it was about the in-migration and out-migration from the 20 from the 21-22, and it showed just the international migration of just being like 3 or 4%. But this in 2024, it showed I should have put what slide. Yeah, so wait, on this,
This one? Yeah.
yeah, so the international in migration was it seems, I guess it's pretty average for the last 3 years. But it does seem to have grown, but in one of the other slides, like a couple down. Well,
Oh, one of them,
yeah, total migration
this one?
foreign, yeah, so the inflow is just 3 to 2%.
And this is from the IRS. This is people who are paying tax.
Ah,
Keep that in mind too. So
Okay.
I should have said that
Okay.
before. It's all written up in that report that NVRC put together, but when you look at the total individuals from this IRS data, it's not the same as our population number because you have, again, folks that don't pay taxes.
Okay,
Either they don't need to, or they just don't pay taxes. Or you have, multiple returns per household. You can get a lot from the trend data,
okay,
but yes.
okay.
I have a question, which is, how does the projected population growth for Arlington compare with the US? Is it higher, lower, about the same?
I haven't checked the US projections in a while. These are projections that we do for our Arlington area. I know we track pretty well with the rest of the region. I can check on that and to look at what I think the Census Bureau has projections out 2060 maybe. But sometimes some of their projections are driven by policy. So
And in terms of the region, are we,
in terms of the region, well, I don't know if you saw that, the 2024 population estimates that were just released showed that metro areas were again growing. So that's good news for us. We'll see what it says next year.
thank you very much.
Sorry, we were practicing. So thank you for allowing us to share our projections. I actually, really want to really extend a thank you to Elizabeth and Nicole and their team. I guess what I had mentioned earlier when our department had, taken off the planning function this school year, they were just wonderful to collaborate early on so that we could understand their process and kind of the timeline for the exchange of data and information in order for us to complete our work as well. So we have really benefited from that a lot. And so it allowed us to continue the work with a smaller team. So today, we'd like to share on our end the fall projections for next school year as well as 10 years out. So every year, APS submits the fall projections for 10 years out. That's usually produced and posted online January of every school year. And then in March, we post a spring update just to the next year's projections. And that's what allows our HR department to begin the staffing allocations for the school. So right now, every school is getting staffing sheets to determine what they need for next school year. And then we'll also share our historical as well as the 10-year projected enrollment. I know an enrollment change by year that has been shared in the past from 2005 to 2024. And then what I'd like to share is my Michael does a great job as our planner and our GIS analyst, and the visualization of data is so powerful. So what we're going to show you is the visualization of our capacity at our schools for next school year, as well as 5 years out. And you'll see actually how well it aligns with the work that was done. So this is our fall projections that we produced early on based on September 30th, 2024. I'm sorry, our membership enrollment data. So we take that membership enrollment, we look at that, and then we use the methodology that has been used in the past by planning and evaluation to do the projections for the next school year as well as 10 years out. This is at the school level, so at elementary, middle, and high, you'll see the capacity, and this is design capacity. So for those of you that have been, I think, watching school board work sessions and not paying attention to the school board meetings, our team has proposed looking at our schools from a different lens instead of design capacity, and that's from a program capacity. Because our schools are dynamic and every year programs may change or move. And design capacity is actually a program capacity at some time in the past, either when the school was first built, had a major renovation. So we feel like a program capacity annually better reflects the capacity of our schools.
All right, you just explain a little bit more, like what,
So
I don't quite get it.
sure. So like our buildings all have what we have used as design capacity. So it's the number of seats available at every school. And that is determined when a building was newly built, had undergone a major renovation and needed to submit a use permit for the county, or it's an old enough building that was determined sometime in the past. And it's based on the programs at that time that the school has. Programs we mean by the elementary school, you have K through 5, grades K through 5, but you also might have pre-K programs. You might have special education self-contained programs. Those all count towards our enrollment numbers at each school, and those would define the capacity at that building at the time. So what we're saying is our design capacities have been static numbers. So at some of our older schools, such as Barcroft Elementary, that design capacity may have been determined 10, 15 years ago. And it may not reflect the actual program capacity and what kind of students they're serving today. So that's why we're actually just finishing up a study this month to be shared with the principals next week, elementary school principals, that compares the design capacity that they've always used for capacity utilization and the program capacity based on this school year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So as you can see, we're fairly well utilized at the school levels from elementary through high school. This is our spring update to the fall projections, which was just published recently in early March, and what is being used for staffing allocations. Slight adjustments at elementary and middle, not substantial, so we still reflect a fairly good utilization rate. This is a chart that has been used in the past for planning and for projections. It basically shows our historical enrollment from the pre-K allocations, allocated seats and actual seats, our K through 12 enrollment, and then the pre-K through 12. So the gray area shows the actual enrollment, and then the blue shows our projections for next year and 10 years out. So it reflects a slight growth and then a gradual decline based on growth. And then this reflects a change year over year of our enrollment. So as we saw during the pandemic, our enrollment decreased substantially. We have actually gained enrollment back since then. And our projections are indicating a slight growth in the next year. And then 5 years out, we're starting to see it. So this one shows next school year, 5 years out, and then the next 5 year interval. So as you can see, it actually works its way through, and it, like I said, it aligns with the county's data. So next school year, we're showing a projection of about a 2.4% growth. But then the 5 years out, in 29, that's when we first see an indication of a declining in our elementary school levels. And then 5 years from there, which makes sense as it propagates, it declines at the middle school level. And this is what I like. It's the visualization of data, and it really helps leadership to see kind of our utilization rates at our schools by school level. So these are all our elementary schools. What you see that are in stars are our elementary school programs and where they're located. So for next school year, we do see some schools that are less than or equal to 85% utilized, mostly in the Northwest quadrant, a handful in other areas, and then 2 schools that really are at overcapacity, and something that our team will begin to review this summer as we review elementary and middle school matches. And then 5 years out, you can see actually the utilization in terms of elementary school. We're going to have more schools about less equal or less than 85%. And then the same 2 schools, the over.
Some, there's some, like reason why that is, there's a new building there with a lot of young families or something like that, or what's the?
I think there could be several reasons. In 2019-20 school year, we had a new elementary school opened, and a new neighborhood elementary school was created, which was innovation. At that time, some boundaries will change, but there probably needs to be a deeper review of boundaries at that area, because in that corridor, we have more mixed housing types and denser housing.
Thanks.
And then again, this is at the middle school level. So this is for next school year. Williamsburg is indicating capacity. And then everyone else is at pretty much at capacity. What I will caution you, and what we've found during our program capacity study, is while enrollment may be steady and not growing as rapidly as we had 10 years ago, we are serving a more diverse student body with greater needs. And what we have found is, surprisingly, surprises us at times when we go visit schools, is a school that's right now, their design capacity may be showing 600 seats and a utilization of less than 70%. When you actually go visit the school, they are using every single one of their classrooms that we consider capacity generating classrooms. But they are serving fewer students because of the types of programs they have. So they may have more pre-K programs. They have more special education programs. And so those class sizes are much smaller than our class sizes from K to 5. So you can drop class size from 23 to 28 from K to 5 all the way down to 8. And that has a significant impact on the capacity. And then 5 years out, we show, again, not much change except for Gunston possibly being at overcapacity. And then the high school, again, next year, we're pretty much at capacity at all our high schools. And then 5 years out, Wakefield indicates a possible overutilization, except we'd like to highlight that the Grace Hopper Center will be open by then, and hopefully will offset the high school capacity. And that's what we have.
Anybody have questions, people?
So when you look at the program capacity, I find it when I looked at your projections, I looked at it in terms of comparison to capacity. Because that's always how I see it. And I understand the the difference between design capacity and, I know like Drew shows it to be very under enrolled, but there are a lot of pre-K and, like programs at that school that utilize the classrooms, but with smaller class sizes.
So I could speak to that if you want,
You-
because
go-
that was our example of today. So
Yeah.
we met with the principals today to kind of give them an overview about what to expect with their program capacity
Mhm.
study. So each principal will receive a small report based on their school. We used Drew in Nottingham as our case study for our work session in November because of the concern, not only from the community, but from, special education when they have a need to place a program. People see a number and they think, oh, we've got lots of seats available or lots of spaces. So true, if you look at their floor plan, and their capacity generating classrooms, they have 29 classrooms. When the design capacity was identified, we believe it was done when they shared that building with the Montessori Public School of Arlington. So when Montessori was part of True, and because of that, class sizes for Montessori range from anywhere between 23 and 28. And they took up at least half of those 29 classroom spaces, right? So when MPSA moved out and had their own building, Drew then became a full neighborhood school. And while their enrollment was less, the opportunity arose because the needs in that community to have more pre-K programs, BPI, pre-K special needs programs, as well as some NIFA programs to serve students. And because of that, their actual capacity utilization, because we know that it's around 67%. Actually, they're using every one of those 29 classrooms, and their capacity utilization based on the programs they have has risen to 81%. So that is a drastic difference that we want to be able to show at all our schools. I mean, some may be different, and that's what I shared today, is that while Drew indicates that their capacity utilization is greater than what it really, that what based on the design capacity, other schools may show their capacity utilization drop, right? Based on current programs they.
I mean, it's interesting, and I think it's a really valuable study, and I'm really glad that you're doing it. And I think last year JFAC supported. We voted to support it, but never actually sent the letter. But I think it is a really valuable study, and during my time on the FAC, that time was spent when APS was growing like crazy, and you just put pre-K classrooms wherever you could. And so if one neighborhood elementary school in North Arlington was growing at a rate that just couldn't put another relocatable on the site, you moved a pre-K classroom out to somewhere where there was room. And, one of the things that we look at in JFAC and we try to advocate for is to have services in areas where they're needed. And so I hope that when you're doing this program design capacity, you're also looking kind of relocate programs from what that had been put in one school to another school where they might be where they may be a better fit for the facility and also for needs for the community. We know from some of the reviews that we did on the facilities last year that came back, about classroom sizes and deficiencies, like, could you move some of those pre-K programs into schools that have smaller classrooms? So that could better utilize, so then you're better utilizing the space that you have for 8 students And that may be in a community that really needs those programs as well. And I hope that when you look at boundary changes, that those kinds of programming changes, moves and this program design study will also inform that location of, and some of our schools also have community centers, right? JFAC had, that have community centers, and can some of those spaces become available, for a changing population. So if we are, I noticed in the pre-K, in the chart that you showed that had just the enrollment. So the pre-K from this year was the second lowest we've ever had. Only after COVID, after the COVID year. And is that a reflection of the fact that the declining birth rate? The birth rate. So it's 871 this year, and the lowest before that is COVID. The COVID year, 844. And so are we going to continue to see trends like that from this declining?
I'm gonna say something. All right, so it's great to be able to talk to other people that understand it, because it just reassures us that we're making sense. Oh, thanks, Stacy. For students with special needs, I think it's kind of also important, like you hit nail on the head with, if we have a student that is identified from the community with for functional life skills, they're typically served at, and this is at the middle school level, they're typically served at their middle school, right? The neighborhood middle school that they go to. And every neighborhood middle school has functional life skills. Functional life skill classroom is comparative to how someone would be able to utilize their space at home. So you have a fridge, you have a kitchen, you have that type of setup in there. It's a very niche setup, very unique, and those get turned on and off. So if we don't have any students identified with FLS, functional life skills, then that space can be used for something else. But if we have one student identified, then that space is turned off and only set aside for that one student. So I think that's an extreme example, but it is a good example as to how some of these spaces get used up real quick, right? Especially when we have more and more students coming in with special needs. Pre-K numbers are interesting. What we hear from early childhood education. Early childhood education those are the individuals over curriculum instruction that kind of give us these allocations. And what we've heard from them is that some of their concerns that members of the community are not eligible of economic. Their economic disadvantage isn't economically disadvantaged enough. So they are not eligible to participate in some of our VPI classes because of the income threshold that we use that's passed down by the state of Virginia. So we are kind of locked into that agreement with the state as to how we allow families to enter into enrollment for those courses. If we were able to get some sort of to make that program more expandable, we would definitely be able to fill up more VPI courses. Right. So that would bump up our pre-K numbers. And if you look at the details in the pre-K allotments, VPI is the one that's kind of really taken the hit over the last couple of years.
So they've had to reduce some classes.
and
And actually that number.
Yes, that's the Virginia Preschool Initiative, just so everyone knows what VPI stands for. Yeah.
Is VPI ever mixed with non-VPI, or is it their classrooms are solely?
It's not, sometimes it will be co-taught with some special education, but it is primarily reserved for 4-year-olds to give them that head start prior to going to kindergarten.
Right, but 4-year-olds who don't qualify economically and could pay for it mix? Like Montessori program mixes,
Yeah, so Montessori is
Yeah,
different because
regular.
there's a threat, there's a sliding scale,
right,
right?
right.
I don't believe EPI is that way because otherwise we would lose federal funding.
That's right.
So it is only reserved for those that are income eligible, and that's where we struggle in our. We're not the only area in this region, right, that struggle to have our students qualify under VPI. If they would allow us to relax some of those thresholds on the state, and I'm saying the state, then we could probably attract more students in our VPI.
Or if the school board did something to assist families with that difference in, I don't know how that would work. But you are correct, the MPSA, the Montessori Public School of Arlington, condition is a 2/3, 1/3 model, where they try to mix the students that would be the 1/3 pay, 2/3 that are income eligible. And that's the same that's applied to our community peer pal program, which is the CPP. So when we're saying all these acronyms, those are all the ones that fall under the preschool.
So BPI can't mix, the other ones can.
BPI will mix with some students with special
Right,
needs.
right.
And those might be students that are identified through curriculum instruction, that for whatever reason they can,
They can be co-taught.
yeah, co-taught and not self-contained.
But is there also a correlation between the declining, the declining number of 0 through 4-year-old kids in the county?
Most likely.
Yeah, I think that probably is going to, yeah, I mean, the inflation and the average households, the income going up. I think when you apply inflation numbers to previous year, I think when we see that it's actually lower now than what it was. So, there's a mix of both of those things. Now I'm supposed to pull those numbers for you guys, and it's on my list about how many 4-year-olds there are in the county. There'll be a follow-up.
You have a BPI classroom and it only have 4 kids in front. I mean, it needs to be filled to a certain amount. Like,
The max class size for a VPI classroom is 16.
they can go as low as they want.
Well, so what they try to do in curriculum instruction, as Michael said, is try to estimate how many students in each level and have enough classes allocated in the areas of need. So that's what they do. And I think after several years, and because we're going through some serious budget exercises, they've identified some classrooms that may not always have population, so.
And from what I understand from past years as well, you need to leave
Yes.
space
Yes.
for pre-K classes
Yes.
because of early intervention and students get identified.
We do see an uptick in pre-K enrollment when it comes to this time of year. So pre-K enrollment does tend to increase after the new year. So pre-K enrollment might be lowest in September. And then maybe hit its peak around this time. And then sort of just stabilize, right? And then, I mean, another document that's also important is the enrollment management plan, which strikes to what you were saying on to how many courses, how many offerings that are available at each school when it comes to VPI. And those are, again, curriculum instruction, early childhood education. They get that through their child find process, which is another application where they work with families. And they would inform us, oh, we had 4 VPIs, let's say innovation. But based on what we've seen from the community so far this year, we're going to be able to consolidate those 4 to 3 because the 4 that we had this year only had 12 and we don't think we're going to get that, So they're the ones that sort of give it to us and then we just present it.
Just a little bit of difference. The child find process is for our special education students, right? And then the VPI, they work in tandem, and so they also go through and city.
I just want to add, years ago, everybody thought about an elementary school had 5 1 grade, 5 of this grade. So it was, everybody thinks in terms of the classroom, but with the independent IEPs for every student, pretty much. Every student has customized, and there's a lot of special needs or gifted or whatever programs that we try to incorporate along with that. So there are classrooms that really you need a full-size classroom, 6 kids. To get into some of the autism programs. When you start looking at all of the specialists that are in schools, when a school was built, I mean, short a time ago, it was 10 years ago. You had a couple. There are workspaces, offices, meeting areas, families and children and et cetera that didn't exist when a lot of these buildings were built. And, you know, a lot of the need has been accommodated by converting a storage room, which may or may not have ventilation, may not have size required, et cetera, as Michael was talking about. You know, the life skills classrooms, some schools had them, some schools didn't. But, you know, you have to kind of make sure the facility is flexible because anybody that shows up has to be accommodated. You know, so that's one of the issues that and you do want a little bit of extra capacity in a building. You don't want to fill it to 100% because chances are you're going to be way over 100% by the time you get to April of the next year. So, you know, we don't want them that full. And when you design a facility, typically you're shooting for 85%, you know, plus or minus. And the old classrooms were essentially set up. You look at standards throughout the country, it's like 25 kids in a classroom, plus or minus 10%. So the square footage and the size you put in there for a standard classroom that would be a traditional classroom that we think of, that's how those classrooms will determine. But when you put in some of the programs that we currently have, as we're doing some of the facility studies that we're currently doing, we're really looking at this and it's working parallel with what we're doing with planning. None of these schools are going to look the same year to year because it's all going to be based on the population that's in that building and the population that's feeding that building, whether it's by boundary, whether it's by birth, whether it's by whatever. And some buildings, you know, just don't have the capacity to handle the programs that are needed, you know, when they're needed. So when we do facility changes, what we're trying to do is make the building as flexible as we can, so that adjustments can be made as they do this. And yeah, if that classroom that takes 6 kids, you know, for that autistic program doesn't have to be there, yeah, that's an additional capacity. They can put 23.3 kids in it for that, you know, elementary program. You can't think of an elementary school the way we thought of an elementary school when we went to school, many of us, you know, because it's changing so rapidly for the independent program. So I think that's one of the things that we have to look at facility standpoint. I think with planning group, you know, like Kathy Ellen trying to do is really look at how do we use these buildings and how do we adapt them year to year. And from a design and construction standpoint, we're trying to say, how do we modify the buildings that they can do?
And how do you make the best use of the existing facilities that you have? And especially in a really tight budget environment.
Some of the schools have
Very, very tight budget environment. And I mean, I just want to point out, I did the math and just the design capacity compared to projections. It's within by 2028, 29 at the elementary school level, there will be a surplus of 1,523 seats. That will grow to a peak of 2031, 32 of 1,816. And that's with the standard pre-K number included of 1,100 and what was it, 19. So
We'll
if
bring you on the planning team.
yeah, so if you go with the, you know, and you could, you know, based on the last couple of years of the pre-K numbers that have been coming in, you could add 200 more surplus seats to these numbers. Which, and if you look at the average size of an elementary school, that's, you know, even our biggest school, that's 2 2 elementary schools, 2 750.
Cardinals.
Yeah, 2 Cardinals.
Yeah.
Surplus of seats. And, I mean, that's just. And, you know, I never would have thought that, you know, sitting in this room, you know, 6 years ago, that this is what we would be looking at. And, but things change. And I think we have to look at the data, you know, and things are continuously changing in our region. Now in ways that I think will impact our population. And that's why I asked about, you know, the employment that we saw. You know, I think that's going to be even, you know, that's going to show us even more in the next couple of years. And I think, you know, because of our tight budget environment, because of our, you know, the changing of the demographics, can these public spaces actually create opportunities to offer senior centers, you know, spaces for, you know, collaborative use, you know, JFAC we've done some research on joint use facilities in other jurisdictions, and Bert and I did research on a high school that had a joint senior center in it. And they, you know, they had separate entrances, but it served a population in a way that was really responsive to changes in the demographics and to the needs of the community. And it also offered educational opportunities for both the populations to, like, the seniors helped make a quilt for Black History Month, you know, or and the high school students would come and help the seniors with their phones. And and the seniors would go in and give history lessons, and, you know, but there are other you know, I know that there are places in the community where people are asking for more community use of some of our facilities, and I just hope that we're looking at that and looking at it, you know, very objectively. And because of the declining birth rates, I mean, I think we're really looking at surpluses of seats in our schools, even with the design capacity review.
Yes, I mean, it may shift a little bit in terms of where the capacity is, but yeah, the birth rate is declining right now. Yes, we will have additional seats. I mean, Arlington has gone through this before in the early 80s.
Yeah.
We don't want to make the same mistake we did in the 80s, right? We don't know. I mean, we talk about, there's a lot of what ifs, right?
What was that mistake?
Selling off some school buildings. And then when we got hit with growth. Weeks ago.
Property.
Yeah, for the land.
You know, we talk about, I mean, the Northwest was so crowded just 10 years ago, right? But those students are matriculating through now our system, middle and high school. So what if we had a wholesale turnover of the Northwest quadrant, you know, and a whole new set of families? You get rid of the older families, as Elizabeth indicated, but people are staying in their houses longer for now. We don't look at things like it.
Right. So, right. So what if we, I mean, there's always questions right now, right? What if we enter into a recession? What if interest rates, whatever happens, up or down? You know, are we going to be in the same situation that we were in the last recession? We were a really strong job market then. So if we get into a recession, I don't, you know, who knows what is going to happen with this area and how it's going to affect that household turnover, because although we didn't have a change in the single family homes that generate the children, we had a change in household structure after the recession because people stayed here. This is where they could have a family and have a child. So that's what drove the population up, along with millennials entering into that childbearing. So I don't think that we can look to that previous recession as an example of what's going to happen. Birth rates, migration, international migration is also key for our growth. If we don't have that international migration, we're not gonna see that growth. You see on those migration slides, I'll give demos, you can pass them around, post them. That, in that 16-17 period was when we started to have less international migration. So policy does impact our migration, especially from international places. All that saying that it's just like, I feel like we're in a mixing bowl right now, and I don't know what cake is gonna come out. I don't know what is gonna happen because there's so many factors. You can't say, oh, well, interest rate's gonna go up or down and this will happen. There's just so many levers that are being pulled right now. It's really hard to say what is going to happen. But I did look at age 4-year-old population estimates, and we have declined since 2020 by 433 students. It's a 16% decline in just the age 4. So right now it says, this is 2023 population estimates. Age 4 was 2,221. So that's the little stuff. Sorry, my screen's not there. 121.
Yeah. Another factor, the remote work, I mean, that was a big factor during COVID. People couldn't move out. But now that that's not, and that's also an unknown, because now, will people move back into this area to avoid a commute? But it's hard to say.
I think it's the ripple effect. I see from these job cuts, it might not be the federal jobs, it could be the contractors. We hear stories of contractors being, they have to let go of a large majority of the workforce. Hearing things about, are people qualifying for home loans anymore if they were a federal government worker? I'm not really sure about that. Maybe, no. So all these things are in the mix, and it's really hard to tell what's going to happen in the short period. I think that's a lot of concern right now. But I love the long-term idea of having nice seniors and they can learn from each other.
Yeah, one question I had was with like the facilities that we had, they seem to be large footprint type formats. And we have a huge amount of office space that's open. And it just seems like as a general rule, both on the county side and APS side, we prefer large format structures rather than going up. And is there any-
They've changed. I mean,
I'm
they
curious.
used to be the large format structure, like you said, but ever since we started building newer elementary schools like Alex was Fleet and Cardinal, we are trying to go up and setting that, recognizing the lack of space that we have in our room. And also to reduce our footprint for sustainability reasons too. So
Then I think part of the reason we went to the 725, 750 elementary sizes, it's more efficient with regard to the management staff instead of having 350, 400 student schools. One of 750 is more efficient.
Sure.
So I think that was thoughts as well. And maybe if we started replacing 2 for 1, you get a new facility, but I don't think anybody was ever thinking about giving up property again, because that was a huge issue. That's
Never. Yeah, I think it's good to look at schools as how many classes per grade they have. That's really interesting if you look at school stuff. All the schools that Jeff has created since he's been here are five classes per grade. If you look at some of our older schools like Nottingham. With a 3. A 3.
You have some of the smaller schools like Randolph or.
yeah, same thing. That's 3 classes.
Yeah, if you have no specials, no pre-K, then you can probably get 4. That's usually not the case in schools that are geographically located in certain portions of Philly. They just typically have the need for more self-contained and the need for more pre-K classes.
Right. Is there a need for more pre-K classes? In parts of the county?
Yeah, I mean.
I would say, yeah, different types of pre-K classes, BPI classes, yes. I know there's a greater need in our southern part of the county. Yeah, sure. In terms of the population we can serve best.
Right, I mean, just certain, I mean, Abington's a really interesting boundary because of the number of students that live within Abington that are, would be eligible if they just went to Abington. If they just went to Abington, Abington would have to be it would have to be like 1,300.
Just the nature of their boundaries, because there's an option school within that boundary.
That is,
Right. So,
so you could make the argument, right? But there's a need for additional. pre-K
I mean, all this planning work will be, hopefully that's what we try to set it up for, is that the program capacity needs to be located local, which we haven't done since before the pandemic. Right, to identify those that we may not need anymore, right?
Right.
And then from there, really leading to the boundary review of the elementary and middle school to really take a look. No one wants to do the boundary. It's a sensitive emotional issue, right? And if we have capacity at our elementary schools, what we don't want to do is just make these rash changes, but what we really want to do is maybe improve some of the boundaries, like we indicated in the visualization, right? We have 2 neighborhood elementary schools that are continually over capacity. Do we have the ability to adjust some of those boundaries to give them?
Changes all,
Mhm.
and then especially at the elementary school level. It is.
Yeah, because you're wedded to your neighborhood, you have to build a
Right.
community. It can be so disruptive. So we're trying to be mindful of that
Right.
and understand, and that's why we need to understand the capacity,
Right.
right, in order to do.
Right.
So.
Hi guys. Sorry, guys. Is anybody? I had a question about the high school, so there is some growth expected next year and the coming years at the high school level. Could you explain that a little bit more?
When
And
you mean
it was
growth, do you mean migration in or the actual grade progression, the growth? 'Cause that's what we're seeing is
right,
we're moving that bubble through and so
Okay.
they're pretty much at middle and going to high school.
okay,
So,
and that's from just the larger classes based on like the higher birth rates and
Exactly.
when people, that moved here when their kids were.
yes.
Yeah.
So I would say 2016 to 18, that's when we hit peak growth, right?
Right,
And so those children were born or they did 5 years down, 2021. That's when we start seeing them enter kindergarten and we're just moving them through.
right,
And so you're going to see our middle and high school pretty much at capacity for the next 5-10 years, right? And then because the birth rates are declining, that's when we see.
right, and then. Last year, we saw kindergarten replacement ratio of negative number. This year it was not quite negative, but pretty close.
Right, so the
Right.
outgoing 12th grade class, right? And then the incoming, yes.
Yeah.
So we're gonna continue to watch them.
Yeah,
I can tell you, and me as the newest person in the planning team here, that birth rate data is what I was reading on and reading on. It's just like you wait with like anticipation, like what is that gonna look like? And like I shared with you, we don't have the 2024, we only get the 2023.
right.
Looking forward to hopefully this August or something.
They, last year in Robert Ruiz is our former liaison, his enrollment report and information that we got from you, it anticipated that 2024's birth rate would increase slightly. Do we know we don't have that, we don't have that information, I understand, but do we know do we have an idea whether that was accurate?
let me look up the population estimates we got for 2024 so I can see. I mean, I think we could see a little bit up and down as things kind of, you know, continue to overall decrease. Let me just look that up real fast and I can give you an answer.
I mean, I understood that what it was based on was that the population of women that would give, that the number of women in Arlington that lived in Arlington that could give birth was bigger. So they could potentially have more babies.
Right, but I think Elizabeth, what you shared with us, which was when we first looked at it, what are we looking at? It looked like there were more
901.
men.
Yeah, oh, right,
Yes,
the migration.
versus women.
Oh,
So, but Elizabeth can explain that.
Yeah, that's how we calibrate the migration model core component, which again, it's like pulling these levers of migration, how do we reach our population that is in a forecast? And I think our forecasts, not that our others weren't, but it's really sound, you know, because we're coming up to 2025, or we are in 2025. You know, that's the, gosh, where have I been? And, what was I gonna say? Sorry.
The migration for men versus women.
Yes, so we have a lot of, and I think in the consultant who built the model calls them the special population. So you think of them as persons that are attending a university, right? They're in a different life stage than someone who is setting up a house, right? Has a house, a husband or wife or whatever, and you know, you're starting a family. And I think we have a lot more of that special population in Arlington than are just those that are going to school. Because we have those young individuals in the workforce. So as a way to calibrate the model is to show the migration for males to be a little bit more than females, because we don't think that that population will be having children. And that's a way that the model, you know, doesn't project first from those that in migration of that population. So did I explain that? Is it understandable?
I think so.
Okay. So births, so 2024 births. And this is July through July, so this would probably be 23 July, yeah. To the end of June 24. The Census Bureau has it at 2,478 compared to 23 at 2,433. So they're not exactly the same numbers that we get from the state because it's a different time and those months do make a difference.
okay.
So
So is that
it's a little bit up, like 40, 45 verse up. We're not gonna, I doubt we'll see that 200, 300. We might, I don't know what's going on out there, so.
Um. 8:30. Um. So, okay, I don't think I have any other questions. Thank you very much for.
Did you want to see if there's any public comments?
Well, I was gonna just wrap this up and then we can ask for public comment. Yeah, thank you very much for this presentation and for all the work that you did to put the presentations together and the underlying data. It is really important for us. It sort of paints a much bigger picture of, you know, what we're looking at with our student population and with our county population. And I think when we look at our county facilities overall, which includes schools and county facilities, like how can we make the best decisions about, you know, making the best use of all of them for our spaces for our entire population. And then for our school age student population is declining in percentage of our overall population. Does it, you know, like there's a funding balance there too, that, you know, as you know, always heard since I moved here, Arlington, only 20% of people in Arlington have kids in school. But everybody's paying taxes, a lot of taxes these days. And so is there, I think it's worth examining this information. I'm not suggesting any change in funding scenarios, but I think it's important that we're serving all of Arlington and all of Arlington residents in the most efficient and economical way possible. Thank you. Do we have any public comment? And I guess we could probably get some public comment from our members.
I'm not sure. Okay.
Yeah, this is Claire. Can I've raised my hand, but I guess can I
Okay.
make a
Yeah.
public comment now?
Yeah.
Maybe it's not a comment, it's a question, and maybe you can't respond. I don't know. But just in terms of the program capacity study, I'm sorry if I missed this. Is that study available? And are the not assumptions, but are the, factors that you have added in to these updated capacity numbers, is that available to understand? So, is it that the design capacity used to be something for a particular school, and now we can kind of follow how you get to a different number of program capacity? And is that information available? So that's my comment / question.
Question for Emily. This is this is public comment. How would you like us to proceed?
What do you think? I think
Could you tell us, you said that this program capacity review is almost finished. And when will it be released to the public?
So I can share what we shared today. The principals, elementary school principals, is that it will be finished. We had shared with them that we would like to share out their reports next week for their review, and any questions or comments they have, right? Any feedback. After spring break, we would like all their feedback due so that we finalize all the studies, put it together in a report for the school board as a draft for their review. So that was our intent, is at the end of April, deliver a draft program capacity study to leadership and then have conversations.
Very sure what I said.
So again, everything feeds a process, right? So after the program capacity study is, again, the relocatable study. This all feeds into what is now called the pre-CIP, right? So this year is our pre-CIP year because last year was our CIP year, which is a preparation for next year's CIP. What we're going to present to the school board in terms of capital projects for next year.
Okay.
There's a lot going into
And
this.
when will the pre-CIP report? The last pre-IC report was released in the summer, so there was an opportunity for review by the FAC and the JFAC. Is that?
So what we understand is the last pre-CIP was released in June of 2023. Right now, there is a scheduled work session on June 10th of this year for the pre-CIP, for the planning team to present our recommendations with participation from both JFAC and FAC.
You're aware of that?
Was that?
There you go. I know. See, you gotta make sure you ask the right
My term
questions. So
finished in May.
Oh,
we
we can't stand for it.
Yeah.
June 10th,
That's right, June 10th.
yes.
2 weeks.
Yeah,
Fly
HC
from-
chair is aware.
They say to.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And she will not, but she will no longer
Be
be.
chair, so.
That's right. Yeah, so thank you for asking those questions.
Yes.
Okay. Any other public comment?
Okay, does Andy wanna chime in?
Andy, do you have any comment? Public comment?
Sorry if I sound weird, y'all. I'm recovering from some kind of bug. I don't know what it is. Otherwise, I'd be there with you. No, I really appreciate the staff's presentations. It's hard to see who's who, but whoever was sitting all the way to Stacy's right, your presentation and explanation was really good. I really appreciated everyone's talks. I think it's interesting how the enrollment and is not singular to one part of the county. You know, you're seeing changes across different spots and how we handle boundary changes and program capacity utilization, I think is really the right way to approach the future and looking forward to working with everybody on this. So anywho, I'm gonna be quiet. I don't have any questions. Claire, actually, I asked one I had, so thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Andy.
Brief comment, and that's just, I appreciate you having the meeting here. Center, because I think it's really positive to meet in the spaces that the JFAC is, you know, having a discussion of and comments on, because I had heard about the Trade Center for a very long time, actually came out by myself and walked the whole site. So this, and I had some insight, so I think it's really helpful. And I think it's beneficial. I wish more people had been able to make it out here, because this was really helpful information. And it's I think it's a very smart thing to do, is to meet either in, you know, a joint site or something that the JFAC will be talking about, so.
Okay. Any other public comment? Okay, then, meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.